Have you ever thought that your biggest mistake might have been not making one at all? Yes, seriously. Because while you were hesitating, reflecting, waiting for the perfect timing, someone bolder already acted, failed, learned, and maybe even claimed the space that could have been yours. Machiavelli, with his brutal clarity, once wrote, "It's better to regret having acted than to feel frustrated for lacking the courage to act." The problem is that we've been taught to fear failure more than stagnation. Society applauds the cautious, but follows the bold. Omission has been glamorized as balance, but in reality, it's often just fear disguised as wisdom. And if you don't confront that fear, it becomes the silent undertaker of your decisions and your potential influence. In this video, you'll discover why action is more strategic than sounding smart. Why the courage to move, even with doubt, is what separates those who build power from those who disappear in silence. Machiavelli's practical philosophy will show you that mistakes are part of the process, but doing nothing robs you of the chance to even play the game. If you've ever regretted not speaking up, not making a move, not taking a shot, this one's for you. And if you think excessive caution protects you, get ready. It might actually be your biggest threat, so stay with me till the end. Because what you'll learn here might just be the spark that awakens your strategic courage and changes your trajectory. And hey, if you enjoy content that challenges your mindset and flips your perspective, go ahead and subscribe now. Hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next, and drop a comment at the end. I'd love to hear if this message hit home for you. In times of crisis, it's not the smartest who lead, it's the boldest. Machiavelli understood this better than most. To him, boldness wasn't recklessness, it was a power strategy. When the world hesitates, those who act first shape the narrative. Those who freeze surrender control. And in the game of self-mastery, the one who commands their own actions with strategic courage takes the lead. Here's the hard truth. The indecisive lose before they even begin. This applies in politics and in everyday life. How many times have you seen someone seize an opportunity simply because they acted before overthinking it? That colleague who asked for a raise while you were still calculating risks? Maybe they didn't get it, but they were noticed. And being noticed in Machiavelli's world is already a form of power. Machiavelli's practical philosophy revolves around movement. He knew the world doesn't wait for the overly cautious. Often, waiting is just fear in disguise. Self-mastery means recognizing when your fear of failure is doing more harm than good. True power begins when you act, even while trembling, because you know inaction has a cost. The truth is, most people already know what needs to be done. The difference lies in those who execute and those who rationalize until they've lost the courage to move. A power strategy requires intelligent action, even if it's imperfect. Boldness isn't about getting it right, it's about making a move. Machiavelli understood this. Leaders don't wait to be perfect, they dare and then adjust. Let's make this real. Imagine someone who wants to start a business. If they wait for the perfect moment, they might never start. But if they act strategically, start small, test, fail, adapt, they move forward. That's the Machiavellian spirit. Do, observe, refine. And if regret comes later, great. Regret means there was movement. Better to adjust your aim than live stuck at the starting line. The most tragic part of inaction isn't the missed opportunity. It's not even having a story to tell. Machiavelli said it in his letter to Vittori. It is better to regret having acted than to feel frustrated for lacking the courage to act. Regret in this case becomes fuel for transformation, not the end of the road. It's failure that teaches you how to hit the target next time. Those who dare also learn to carry the weight of their decisions. And that's key. Every action brings consequences, not just external ones, but internal ones too. When you act with strategic courage, you're training the muscle of responsibility. Machiavelli saw this as a virtue, the ability to stand by your choices even when the world shakes. And that's what separates leaders from the elite. Not fearlessness, but the ability to move despite fear. Because in the silence of inaction, the world moves on without you. And those who learn to conquer hesitation are the ones most likely to conquer their destiny. But what happens when fear is stronger than the desire to act? That's a dilemma Machiavelli knew all too well. Machiavelli observed human nature with surgical precision. To him, every decision swings between two forces, fear and interest. And here's the key. Those who understand this dynamic can predict behavior. Most people act more out of fear than interest. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of rejection. But what they don't realize is that unless fear is mastered, it turns into paralysis disguised as prudence. How many times have you held back just because you were afraid of what people might think, or afraid of failing in front of an imaginary audience? That kind of fear doesn't protect, it immobilizes, and worse, it steals your authority over your own life. Machiavelli didn't preach fearlessness. He taught how to dominate fear. True self-mastery begins the moment you move forward, even while fear whispers, "Don't." In any decision, personal, professional, or political, ask yourself, am I acting out of interest, or am I avoiding this out of fear? That one question changes everything. For instance, you might stay in a dead-end job because you fear uncertainty, or remain in a broken relationship because you're afraid of being alone. Strategic courage requires you to stare fear down and say, "You're not in charge anymore." And when interest kicks in, that's when real strategy begins. Acting out of interest isn't selfish, it's clarity. It's knowing what you want and aligning your behavior with that goal. Take someone who decides to move cities in search of more opportunities. There's risk. Sure, there's fear. But the deeper interest, growth, purpose, freedom, outweighs the comfort of staying stuck. That's applied philosophy in action. Machiavelli knew fear could be a great advisor, but a terrible ruler. Use it to prepare, not to decide. Strong leader listens to fear but chooses based on greater interest. The same goes for anyone seeking self-mastery. It's not about erasing emotion, but knowing when to listen and when to silence that internal voice trying to keep you small. This dynamic of fear versus interest also shapes how others see you. People driven by fear radiate insecurity, but those who act with clear intent inspire confidence. Machiavelli taught that power is tied to perception, and perception is shaped by your decisions. A hesitant leader projects doubt, but someone who chooses firmly, even if they make mistakes, radiates strength. Let's be honest, you won't always know if a decision is right, and that's okay. Machiavelli wrote about this. The real danger lies in paralysis. If you wait for 100% certainty, you'll live in the shadows of inaction. And inaction, as we've seen, is a silent killer. Fear of failure often hides a deeper truth, the fear of taking responsibility. But here's where the shift begins. When you accept that fear is natural, but not insurmountable. When you feel it and act anyway, you begin tapping into a rare power, self-mastery. And that brings us to a whole new question. Is inaction always a weakness? Or can it sometimes be a strategy in disguise? Most people mistake omission for weakness, but to Machiavelli, not every lack of action is cowardice. Sometimes true power lies in seeming still, while everything around you keeps moving. This is pure self-mastery, the ability to restrain, the impulse to react and act only when the action truly matters, not when your ego shouts. Silence in the right hands speaks louder than 1,000 words. Ever notice that the more you talk in certain situations, the more you lose authority? Sometimes the smartest move is not to move. Like a chess game, there are moments when advancing exposes your king. Omission, in that context, becomes an intelligent move, if it's intentional. Machiavelli mastered this. A pause, for him, was part of the rhythm of power, not retreat from fear of action. This is especially true in everyday life. Pointless arguments, fruitless debates, or moments when sharing your opinion would only be used against you. Knowing when to stay silent is just as strategic as knowing when to speak. Practical philosophy says, don't react to everything. Some battles only exist to drain your energy. And here, real strength is knowing which wars are worth your time. But here's the catch. Calculated omission is not the same as hiding out of fear. The line is thin. Strategic silence requires clarity, not escape. It's when you choose not to act yet, because you understand that time is working in your favor. This is Machiavellian patience, the art of letting your opponent waste their energy while you observe, learn, and prepare a sharper attack. Think about it in business. An executive may choose not to intervene during a conflict, not because they're indifferent, but because they want to see who reveals themselves, allies or saboteurs. That's not weakness. That's action, disguised as silence. It takes strategic courage to withstand the pressure of doing nothing, while secretly preparing for everything. This also applies personally. It might mean not responding to provocation, not justifying yourself to those who've already made up their minds, quietly distancing yourself from toxic environments. If Machiavelli were alive today, he'd say, "Never hand your enemy ammunition with your own mouth." Sometimes silence is your armor. It's also a matter of presence. When someone reacts to everything, they lose mystique. But those who master the art of strategic absence increase their impact when they do show up. Remember the saying? Still waters run deep. It's the silence that builds anticipation. And in the power game, anticipation is a priceless asset. But if you overplay caution, what starts as strategy can easily become your cage. Because the moment prudence becomes fear in disguise, the very tool you thought would protect your power begins to slowly tear it apart. Prudence is a virtue until it isn't. When it turns into paralysis, it stops protecting and starts sabotaging. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Those who wait too long for the perfect moment lose the real timing of power. Because power, by nature, doesn't tolerate hesitation. It demands positioning, even if there's risk involved. And here's the key: the world doesn't reward observers, it rewards movers. You've heard it before. It's not the right time yet. But somehow that perfect time never comes. This is fear dressed up as responsibility. Excessive prudence is just fear in a suit. The fear of failure sneaks in, blocks your courage to act, and hides behind logic. But the truth, that's just omission in disguise. And to Machiavelli, that was the first crack in the foundation of power. In practice, we see this everywhere. Brilliant ideas that never leave the notebook. Talented people who never take a shot. Why? They're waiting for the stars to align, for full approval, for total certainty. But anyone who thinks strategically knows, perfect timing is a myth. Real timing is when you act with what you have and make the best out of it. True leaders know that every decision carries risk, but they also know that not deciding is a decision in itself, and it comes at a high cost. A company that doesn't adapt in time loses market share. A person who hesitates too long loses respect. Machiavelli believed history is made by those who act early, and there's no such thing as early action without a touch of danger. Fear doesn't go away, you just learn to carry it. Need a real-world example? Look at any entrepreneur or political leader. None of them had guarantees of success. They all made bold moves, faced pushback, and stumbled. But they acted, tested, failed, adjusted. Progress only happens through motion, not through endless planning. This applies to your life too. Your career, your relationships, your direction. Prudence, when paired with strategic courage, prepares you. But when it overrules your instinct to act, it weakens you. And it slowly erodes your public image. People don't respect those who are almost ready forever. The world admires those who step up, who dare, who decide. Because power is built on action, not on speculation. Machiavelli spoke of virtù, the ability to shape fate instead of being shaped by it. And virtù demands movement. If you wait too long, you hand over your narrative to randomness. You go from author to side character in your own story. And here, once again, self-mastery becomes your shield against fear disguised as logic. But what if that decision leads to regret? That's exactly where Machiavelli surprises us, because to him, regret isn't a sign of weakness. It's a necessary piece of the evolution process, because worse than making a mistake is never having lived enough to regret anything at all. In his letter to Vittori, Machiavelli wrote something that completely reframes our fear of failure. It is better to regret having acted than to feel frustrated for lacking the courage to act. That's not a call to recklessness. It's a call to real life where mistakes are part of the journey, but inaction is a quiet death. Regret, for Machiavelli, wasn't the end. It was a necessary stage in building self-mastery. Regret only exists where there was action. And that's what makes it powerful. It means you had the strategic courage to move. It means you took a shot. Regret is also a compass. It points to what needs refinement. The problem isn't making mistakes. It's refusing to learn from them. Practical philosophy teaches us, those who act and reflect evolve. Those who only think get stuck. Think about it. How many times have you regretted something you didn't do? The job you didn't apply for? The message you didn't send? The moment you let slip away? That kind of regret tends to sting more because it's tied to what could have been. It's a void, a ghost of a life unlived. Machiavelli flips this on its head. Act, fail, reflect, refine. That's how you build real power. In practice, regret becomes your blueprint. Say you launched a project and it tanked. You could drown in guilt or break it down. Was the timing off? Was the partnership weak? Did you skip planning? Great, now you've learned. Machiavelli never romanticized perfection. He admired those who act, fall, and come back sharper. That's self-mastery in motion. This also applies to relationships. Regret from trusting the wrong person. Regret from staying silent when you should have spoken up. Those scars are valuable, as long as you choose to grow from them instead of getting stuck in self-blame. Regret, when handled with intention, becomes fuel, not a weight. It becomes a tool of alignment, not an anchor of shame. And here's the twist. Failure makes you human. People don't trust those who've never stumbled. They respect those who admit, adapt, and lead with authenticity. In politics, in business, in life, those who embrace their missteps and keep moving forward build lasting credibility. Power isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise. Machiavelli knew the power game wasn't clean. It involved risk, misjudgment, and hard lessons. But it also offered transformation for those who dared. In that world, regret wasn't a weakness. It was a stepping stone. Each mistake, owned and studied, sharpened the blade of virtue. Because growth isn't found in always being right. It's found in getting better after being wrong. And the stronger you get, the bigger your decisions become. Not just for you, but for those around you. That's when your private choices start to shape your public image. That's when your actions begin to echo beyond your own story. Machiavelli was a master at seeing the invisible. He knew there's no such thing as a neutral decision. Everything communicates. Deep down, every personal choice carries a political message. Every time you act, even in private, you're either building or damaging your public image. Sound dramatic? It's not. The way you handle conflict, opportunity, or challenge shapes how the world sees you. Think about it. Someone who constantly turns down opportunities out of fear doesn't just seem cautious, they seem weak. A professional who keeps changing, their stance appears unstable. A leader who hesitates on key decisions loses credibility. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't rely solely on what you do. It's rooted in what others perceive you do. That's the real game. This is where self-mastery becomes visible. When someone makes a hard decision with clarity, they project strength, even if it's unpopular. Strategic courage is read as leadership, and over time, leadership builds influence. Influence becomes symbolic capital, an invisible asset that opens doors, attracts allies, and commands respect, all triggered by private, personal decisions. In real life, this means you can't treat your choices like they exist in a vacuum. Everything, from the people you surround yourself with to the way you respond to pressure, builds your reputation. If you're constantly avoiding conflict, people pick up on it. If you consistently stand firm, even silently, you start building presence. That's straight from Machiavelli. Smart action, strategic perception. And just to be clear, this isn't about performing for others. It's about understanding the ripple effect of your choices in every environment you enter. Because a powerful image is built in silence and maintained through consistency. It's the invisible fabric of your actions that shapes how you're seen when the spotlight eventually turns your way. This also changes how you handle failure. Own your missteps with honesty and you earn trust. Hide them or blame others and you destroy credibility. Machiavelli was blunt. Power is perception, and perception is shaped by consistency. This applies to politicians, CEOs, and yes, to you too. So next time you think about avoiding a tough decision, remember, even that avoidance sends a message. Omission speaks, silence broadcasts. Hesitation is read, even when nothing is said. So if you want to build respect, treat every choice as a stroke on the canvas of your legacy. And here's where things get even more interesting. How do you balance the raw impulse to act with the cool logic of strategy? How do you avoid getting trapped in emotion, but also avoid being ruled by cold calculation? This is where Machiavelli introduces one of his most powerful ideas. To Machiavelli, virtù wasn't just a virtue, it was a force. A unique blend of action, intelligence, and personal power. It was the rare ability to act with intensity without losing direction, to combine impulse and strategy without being ruled by either. That's what separates amateurs from true strategists. The impulsive act without thinking. The overthinkers never act. But the person with virtù? They move with timing and self-mastery. Living by impulse is like being a walking emotional grenade. One word triggers you. One problem makes you quit. But living only by calculation turns you into a ghost. Always analyzing, never acting. Practical philosophy teaches that both extremes are traps. True power is born in balance, and that balance can be built. You're not born with virtù, you forge it. You see it most clearly under pressure. Picture this. You're in a meeting. Someone challenges you. Impulse says shout. Reason says stay quiet. Virtù finds the third way. Breathe, respond with calm authority, and walk out stronger. That posture creates leaders. Machiavelli didn't admire saints or tyrants. He admired those who knew how to play the game with strategic courage and self-possession. A perfect real-life example is entrepreneurship. When an idea excites you, impulse wants to launch it tomorrow. But without a plan, that's a quick path to failure. On the other hand, over-planning kills the fire. The path of virtù looks like this. Research the market. Test the concept. Start small, fail fast, adjust, and grow. It's fire paired with foresight. And that, my friend, is power in motion. Virtù is also emotional stamina. It's not folding after one rejection. It's sticking to your path even when everything feels like it's falling apart. As Machiavelli said, it's about shaping fortune instead of being shaped by it. The world is unstable. If you wait for certainty, you'll never act. Virtù is movement despite the chaos. It's dancing on the edge with your eyes wide open. And no, you can't just learn this from books, though reading helps. You build virtù in the trenches, in hard conversations, in uncomfortable decisions, in real tension. Want to grow virtù? Step up. Take ownership. Get honest feedback. Read Machiavelli, sure, but also watch yourself in action. Where do you explode? Where do you freeze? Self-mastery is sharpened in those observations. Machiavelli reminds us, there's no perfect formula. Virtù is contextual. What works today may fail tomorrow. That's why the strategist develops sensitivity. They read the room. They sense timing. They blend emotional intelligence with calculated moves. And that presence, calm, confident, grounded, is magnetic. It doesn't need to shout. It is heard. But what about those moments when you know exactly what needs to be done and still don't do it? When your own conscience is screaming and you mute it? When you betray your own truth by staying silent? That's where the game gets serious. The worst kind of lie isn't the one you tell others. It's the one you tell yourself when you pretend you don't know what needs to be done. Machiavelli knew this well. Ignoring your inner voice is the beginning of weakness. When you stay silent knowing what action must be taken, you're not avoiding conflict. You're betraying your own power. And that quiet betrayal cuts deeper than any external defeat. You've felt it before, haven't you? that decision you kept postponing, that conversation you avoided. Deep down you knew, and that knowing, ignored, leaves a sting that no one else can see. The regret that follows isn't like failure. It's worse, because it comes from self-abandonment. Machiavelli saw this as the true root of downfall, the internal betrayal that comes long before any public loss. The danger is that the world rarely punishes the self-betrayer immediately. The punishment is delayed. It arrives through missed opportunities, quiet loss of respect, and the slow erosion of presence. Those who don't take a stand begin to fade, and in the power game, the invisible lose by default. Practical philosophy says, respect is earned through courage, and courage is earned through honesty with yourself. This form of omission isn't just weakness, it's sabotage. And worse, it becomes a pattern. Every time you avoid action, your brain gets more comfortable with fear. You're not just delaying a decision. You're training your system to retreat. Over time, your life becomes a sequence of quiet compromises. You don't live what you want. You survive what you let happen. That's not strategy. That's surrender. But here's the good news. There's a way out. It starts with radical clarity, facing the places where you've been cowardly, where you've silenced your own truth. That moment hurts, but it opens the door. Next comes the shift. Make the move. Send the message. Take the stand. Machiavelli would say, only action dissolves weakness, and he'd be right. You don't need to become a superhero overnight. You just need to take back one piece of yourself at a time. Speak up in a meeting. Say no to what drains you. End what no longer serves you. Self-mastery is built in these micro-decisions. It's a daily practice of strategic courage, a commitment to stop leaving yourself behind. And there's a ripple effect. When you stop betraying yourself, others follow suit. People sense it. They stop testing you. They stop underestimating you. Because omission is visible, even when unspoken. When you show up fully, with presence and honesty, your environment adjusts. And that presence brings you face to face with a threshold, the moment of choice, the decision that separates those who drift from those who define their future. Because in the end, what truly divides the common from the great is this exact turning point. For Machiavelli, deciding wasn't just about choosing a path. It was a rite of passage. A moment when a person stops being just another face in the crowd and begins to emerge as a figure of influence. And that transition requires strategic courage, because to decide is to take ownership, to carry the weight, accept the risk, and most of all, embrace the responsibility that comes with personal power. In a world where most people wait for others to make decisions for them, the auteur, one who takes initiative, stands out immediately. You know that friend who always says, "What do you think I should do?" Now count how many people you know who say, "I know what I'm going to do." Not many. And those few are the ones who start to attract attention, authority, and respect, even without trying. Practical philosophy teaches that the act of deciding reveals more than the decision itself. It shows who you're becoming. That's why so many people avoid hard choices. It's not the outcome they fear, it's the identity shift it demands. Growth requires letting go of comfort, and yes, that's uncomfortable. But it's also necessary. Self-mastery doesn't happen inside the comfort zone, and those who avoid decisions, they lose respect. Fast. In politics, indecision is a death sentence. In relationships, those who never take a stand become irrelevant. In business, hesitation costs market share. Machiavelli knew power moves fast, and only toward those who act. If you hesitate too long, you miss the window, and the world moves on without you. That said, this isn't about making perfect decisions. No one does. It's about making bold ones, and then adjusting with clarity when needed. A leader who changes course with intention isn't weak, they're aware. But someone who delays endlessly, they lose the right to be heard. Decisions are the first bricks of authority. Without them, you're just another voice in the noise. You can start small, set boundaries, say no, end a cycle, choose a direction. Each choice reinforces your self-command. Think of it like building muscle. Every rep counts. Machiavelli, if he were beside you now, would say, to rule, even yourself, you must first choose with resolve. And he wouldn't be wrong. Every decision adds to your story. Over time, you go from someone reacting to life to someone shaping it. And that shift changes everything. People begin to look to you. Your words carry weight. Your silence becomes powerful. That's when the real power game begins. But those who keep running from decisions, who hide behind endless caution, they rarely leave a mark. And history, as Machiavelli reminds us, was never written by the hesitant. History is selective. It doesn't remember the overly cautious, the ones who stayed silent, the ones who waited too long. It remembers those who acted, even when they failed, those who tried, stumbled, but left footprints behind. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. The coward may live a safer life, but they rarely leave a legacy. Because inaction, over time, equals erasure. The greatest punishment for the coward isn't failure, it's being forgotten. The world moves too fast to remember those who never showed up. Meanwhile, the bold, even the flawed ones, are remembered, quoted, studied. Think of any powerful biography. Gandhi, Napoleon, Mandela, Steve Jobs, all made mistakes, all faced resistance. But they acted, and that's why they matter. Here's the irony of fearing action. It promises safety, but delivers invisibility. The person who avoids risk ends up watching life from the sidelines. Machiavelli saw the world as a symbolic battlefield, and those with self-mastery, even in failure, carved their space. But those who overprotected themselves simply vanished. Of course, not everyone needs to be in a history book, but everyone wants to be remembered by someone. Your friends, your family, your team, your partner. That only happens when you live with authenticity, when you make bold decisions that reflect who you are. Not decisions designed to please, but to stand true to your essence. Practical philosophy is clear. Power respects presence. It follows those who do, those who speak up, those who move even when afraid. Because that's what inspires. That's what shifts environments. That's what leaves a legacy. Life doesn't demand perfection. It demands courage. And if you fail, use the failure as a forge. If you fall, get back up with better aim. If they criticize you, filter the truth and discard the noise. What you can't afford is to keep hiding behind prudence, because that mask, over time, becomes your prison. Machiavelli understood. Strategic courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of will. It's moving, even when uncertain. If you act, you build. If you hesitate, you vanish. And the life of the hesitant is marked by silent frustration, the kind that watches the world spin but never jumps on. So the question is, would you rather fail trying or disappear waiting? And how you answer will reveal just how willing you are to live with power or with regret. Now tell me, how many times have you held back and later found yourself haunted by the what if? How many doors closed simply because you waited too long? And most importantly, how much longer are you going to let being careful be your excuse for not living the life you want? Machiavelli handed you the tools. Practical philosophy lit the path. Strategic courage, that's already inside you, waiting to be unleashed. But nothing changes until you choose to step up. And so, decision is yours. Keep hiding behind hesitation, or finally take control of your own narrative. So let me ask you, what's one decision you know you need to make, but keep postponing? Share it in the comments. Not for me, for you. Make it real. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and pass this video along to someone who's stuck in the same paralysis. Because anyone who wants to dominate the world needs to start by mastering themselves. And if this message hit deep, don't miss the next step in this journey. Be feared, not ignored, the silent path to respect, where you'll discover why respect begins in silence and ends in a presence no one dares to ignore.